If you're ready to take the plunge and draft your own DIY last will, this video I'm going to talk about 5 different things that you need to be aware of as you're diving into this. There's a few important reasons, and as a trust and estates attorney, having run my own firm for about 15 years, I realized that one thing that attorneys do is try to take all the guesswork out of any kind of what we call a testamentary document. Any kind of will, want to take the guesswork out for a couple of reasons. One, you could end up with an unenforceable last will if you don't make some effort to take the guesswork out in terms of how it's executed, witnessed. And then even if you do have an enforceable will, you might end up with a will that's just confusing, that people are engaged in a lot of argument and strife because things just aren't quite clear. So let's jump into these 5 as you're working through your own form. I know it may seem simple, but just remember, this is a very mysterious and tricky area of law, so you want to understand some fundamentals. So let's jump in. First thing you need your last will to be a roadmap. All right. What I mean is you need to tell whoever's reading it down the road what it is. And so your form is likely going to say, this is my last will and testament. And you also want to put things like, so this is my will, but you also want to put, your name, date of birth, and if you're married, divorced, kids. All right, so these are the basics. And if you have a home, you might want to also state that you have a home. You're going to want to mention your personal property and how that's being distributed. Some wills will have a written memorandum that are referenced in the will about the property. You also want to mention digital assets. This is huge for 2024. Digital passwords, other kinds of intellectual property that could be online. So once you've covered all your bases with this, then you need to go and also talk about any gifts that you're going to be making. You might, have a condition on a gift. You have to be a little bit careful about that. And then finally, you're going to talk about how everything in your entire estate is being divided. Cost is another factor. So this is your roadmap. Again, all of this is for educational purposes. These are general things that you want to make sure you include in the roadmap. So we've got the point next. After you have your roadmap, you need to make your appointments. All right. So who are you going to appoint? Well, you're going to have somebody to manage your last will, which is basically your executor. You've probably heard that term. Some states, they're called a personal representative. Same thing. You might also be appointing guardians for kids, for minor kids, or possibly an aging parent. If you're taking care of someone who's older, then you may need to appoint a guardian for that person, and that's something that can be missed. This is a little beyond this video, but if you're creating a trust inside the will for young kids, you may also be appointing a trustee inside of the last will. Again, there's probably going to be a separate video on trust for kids inside of wills. Nonetheless, these are all of your appointments. The attorney, if you had an attorney, they would have been listed, but typically, if this is a DIY, this is going to be the extent of all your appointments. Okay, so we got number 2. Now, if we made our appointments and we created our roadmap, the next thing to know is this is a formal document. So this means you need to have certain things included in it, and it will vary a bit based on state laws. Generally speaking, you're going to have the formality is going to be 2 witnesses plus a notary. And with a notary, you have an affidavit. So the deal with this is that if you don't have an affidavit because you didn't have it notarized, in most states, your people that are in charge of your last will may be responsible to track down your witnesses. So you really don't want that. So you really want to follow this sort of formalistic approach with your notary affidavit. Some of this is going to relate to your state laws, which we'll talk about down there. So you want to follow your formalities. You also want to, like I said up here, state this is your last will and talk about how you're revoking previous last wills. That's kind of key when you set that up. All right, so we moved through all these three thus far. Next, we're going to go to the execution phase of the will. You don't want to get through all of these, get to execution, and realize that you wouldn't realize it, but someone would realize that you executed it wrong. Meaning this, in many states, you have to have both witnesses and the notary all in the same room with the person. So these people in the room, even if your state's not so strict, I would recommend that you follow the strict formalities for executing this with the two witnesses and the notary. The other thing that is huge for executing a will, which a lot of people don't think about, is capacity. If you're wondering how a will is challenged, one of the ways is to try to challenge the capacity. Another might be to challenge the formalities. So you really need to understand this. Capacity is huge. In other words, does the person have the knowledge of what they're doing? Are they medicated? Are they of age where they have sufficient understanding of what they're doing? You could ask them questions. You know, who's the president? That kind of thing. Most people know who that is nowadays. Okay, so make sure this is executed. And finally, we're going to get to your home state. Thing with your state laws is that those probate and will and trust laws govern last wills. I'll give you an example. A no contest clause. A lot of people think no contest clauses are really cool because if somebody challenges your will, they could be out of luck. If they challenge and loot, and you can enforce a no contest clause, basically they get nothing at that point. Only problem is that these are only enforceable in some states. So you got to know what your home state allows, and I can guarantee you there's a bunch of other provisions in regard to last wills that will hinge upon state law. So I encourage you, we've created a resource on our resources page in our blog where you can look up your home state and wills, and our website is InsuranceandEstates.com. Go to the resources page, blog, look up your home state, wills, and it should give an overview of the statute in your state, plus some general information, again, for educational purposes. We never offer legal advice. Of course, we can't do that because of state laws, but we want to offer this as a guideline when you're doing your DIY last will. We also have a portal that is a point where you could go through to an independent website not affiliated with us that could help you get started and create your DIY last will. If you like this topic, give us a like. If you have questions, please do leave a comment. I will, for educational purposes, answer the comment as best I can. If you want to subscribe, and if you like more of these topics, there will be more in this arena of wills and trust, estate planning, wealth transfer, and utilizing assets for planning, which is what we do here at Insurance and Estates. So once again, I hope this is helpful to you, and I give you best wishes in embarking with your DIY last will. I'll see you in the next one.